Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. So, in breaking news, we hit 1,000 subscribers on the channel last night. So I greatly appreciate all our subscribers and all our viewers. Sometimes people are just passing through, but that's cool too. So very grateful for that, and we'll keep trying to do some good stuff here. So with that, I kind of want to get back to throwing out a little history and stuff like that. So this morning, I got a load. I'm here in the Garden State of New Jersey. New Jersey is the most densely populated state in America. So if you've driven through here, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I'm here. I had a 0900 appointment. I thought I'd be quite a bit early, but some guy decided that he should overturn his tanker trunk on 295. So spent like 40 minutes trying to get past that. So I still got here on time, but yeah, it was. I'm still having a better day than that guy though. But so on my way up here from Capitol Heights, Maryland, I went past Fort McHenry, and I went through the Fort McHenry Tunnel. And actually, kind of weird thing, Capitol Heights is right by Bladensburg, Maryland. And so during the War of 1812, because we're going to come back to Fort McHenry in a second, there was a big battle at Bladensburg that the British were victorious in. And that's what really allowed Washington, D.C. to be captured and, burned and everything. And James Madison, Dolly Madison, they had to evacuate the White House. And in fact, the capital of the United States was actually transferred to a small town that's still there and is still very small, called Brookville, Maryland. It's in Montgomery County, Maryland. It's a really pretty little town, but there's almost nothing there. Maryland Highway 97 passes through it. But by the way, do not try to drive your truck through there because you're curious, because it is not. I used to commute back and forth to work on that road. It's not a road you want to drive a truck down. Trust me on that. So anyway, the British are victorious. They sack Washington, and they set their sights on Baltimore. And this was a dual-pronged attack, and this would start around September 11th, 1814. And the idea of the British and the British commanders was that, hey, Baltimore is an important seaport, which it still is today, and it is the third largest city in the United States, which it is not anymore. But at the time, so it was New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore. Those were the three largest cities in the fledgling United States. So so the British mount this attack, and really what happened is that what occurred was called the Battle of North Point, and the British commander was actually killed really before the battle even started. And part of it was, I think, just his own hubris and thinking that these American militiamen who had kind of like ran off the field in Bladensburg, they'd be facing the same people up in Maryland or farther north of Maryland, because Bladensburg is in Maryland too. It's in Prince George's County. And so, the British commander, his name was Ross, General Ross. He just kind of like out directing troops and stuff. It's kind of weird, the parallel, but if you know the story of Major General John Reynolds, who was killed early on the first day at the Battle of Gettysburg, kind of same thing. He was just like out directing troops. He shot off his horse, right? And unfortunately, his subordinate, immediate subordinate, a colonel by the name of Brooke, he didn't really know what the battle plan was. there was a lot of competition, a lot of ambitious people in the military. It had a lot to do with the peerage and people that were like important in society and stuff. So so Ross's subordinate did not know what the plan was. And so what ends up happening is that the British end up losing the Battle of North Point, notwithstanding that the Americans kind of had some issues of their own. But they can't prosecute their land campaign. So it falls to the British Navy, the Royal Navy, to try to get into Baltimore Harbor and, basically lay waste to the city with bombardment. But first they have to get past Fort McHenry. And by the way, this is going to be the time when Francis Scott Key writes the poem that will eventually become the Star-Spangled Banner. But I don't really want to focus on that much. I mean, and by the way, Key was just an observer of the battle. He was on what was called a truce ship, trying to secure the release of somebody. In fact, at the time, Key, and I said I wouldn't talk much about him, but actually Key was the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. That was his job at the time. He was, a lawyer. So anyway, he just observed. Basically, the Star-Spangled Banner is a poem written of his observations, because he took notes and then later wrote it out. So anyway, on the 12th of September, 1814, the British bombardment of Fort McHenry commences, and I take it back. It commences on the 13th, right? After the Battle of North Point, it kind of been like a draw, but that wasn't good enough because the British couldn't move on Baltimore by land. So the bombardment of Fort McHenry starts, and for the most part, the British were able to stay out of the range of Fort McHenry's guns. And they really did drop a lot of ordnance on Fort McHenry. Fort McHenry at one time was receiving incoming naval gunfire at a rate of about one round every 45 seconds. There were casualties in Fort McHenry. Fort McHenry had about 1,000 defenders, and they had some big guns, but they didn't have the range they needed to get to the British ships. The guns at Fort McHenry were only able to go out about 1.5 miles. But some of those guns were crewed by as many as 22 people. So the garrison commander, basically said, okay, let's save our ammunition. And there were some things that the British misinterpreted about what was going on in the garrison, like removal of casualties and slowing down the rate of fire, that they weren't sure that they didn't really have the garrison at almost a point of capitulation. So some of the British ships moved in closer, but these were ships that needed to drop anchor, bow and stern anchors, in order to fire. They were called bomb ships, but it was more like naval mortars. And so the garrison commander, Major Armistead, he waits until the British drop anchor, and because they had moved in closer, they were now within range of McHenry's guns, and he opens up on them and does a lot of damage, actually. And there were a few other things that protected the port of Baltimore. There were some other batteries on shore. The citizens of Baltimore, some merchant ships, actually went out into the channel and scuttled themselves. And there was an anchor chain across the entrance to what is called the Inner Harbor. And had the British been able to get in there, they would have been able to shell the city proper. So, kind of like the Russians are doing to the Ukrainians, right? Shelling civilian targets and, just making things hard for everybody, killing civilians. And also, the Baltimore waterfront was lined with wharves, so there was a lot of cargo there. Would have been cotton, would have been tobacco, would have been a lot of products that the British would either want to destroy or would want to capture and use for their own purposes. So anyway, that's a little bit about Fort McHenry and what went on there in 1814. Okay, so in other news, the, what is it called? Truckers protest. Anyway, you know, the guys that were, you know, like clogging up the roads around DC and getting flipped off by everybody, including me. They've decided to migrate westward. They've taken Horace Greeley's advice and they're going west. And their destination supposedly is California, although apparently they're running out of money. Which isn't surprising, because when all you do is drive around and waste diesel fuel, you're probably gonna, you know, run out of money at some time. You know, you gotta do some actual work. So apparently they're going out to California to protest some mandates in California, and the reason they're giving is that, excuse me, whatever happens in California always spreads around the nation. That's what they claim. So, you know, look for them if you're out on the West Coast. Look for them at a, I don't know, at a truck stop near you. There's also a really, really big storm coming next week, and Wyoming, parts of Montana, western Nebraska, parts of Colorado, that's going to be no bueno for like Tuesday through Thursday, I think. This system is coming in, and they're talking about feet of snow, like in certain places with the correct conditions, feet of snow. So, man, keep an eye on the weather. And then, you know, it's going to bring high winds, and when it collides with the warmer air, there's going to be chances for really severe thunderstorms, you know, other nasty stuff. So it's April. It's kind of a transitioning month for the weather a lot of times, and it's going to be lit next week, so keep an eye out. Okay, so the subject at hand. You know, I just happened to be doing a live loaded call, and I had to, for whatever reason on the live loaded call, because I guess it just went to regular dispatch because I picked up at like 4 this morning. You know, I got a message from somebody at Prime, you know, on the phone, and they were talking about, you know, it's a requirement to have the ASSA ABLOY locks. Well, I didn't know it was a requirement or a policy. I'd certainly never seen that in writing. I know they do sell these very expensive locks in the Prime stores. And one of the things that was said in this message is that these are locks that cannot be cut. Well, a couple of things, and I'm going to get into other trailer stuff, but let's talk about theft from trailers, or people getting inside your trailer and maybe contaminating it somehow. Okay, when I was at J&R Shugel had what actually I thought was a kind of an okay idea. And that idea was they wanted to use the ASSA ABLOY locks, and every single driver in the company got a key that fit all of the locks on the trailers. And what they would do is they would rivet the lock to the back of the trailer, and it had a chain on it. So when you picked up a trailer, a lock was already there. You already had a key that fit it. It didn't matter which trailer you got. However, as you can imagine, I eventually picked up some trailers where either the lock was completely missing or it had been cut by a consignee, by a receiver. And, you know, so you'd go out there and there's a lock hanging there and it's clearly been cut. So the idea that an ASSA ABLOY lock cannot be cut is false. I've seen them cut. I've seen multiple locks cut. And, you know, how did they get cut? By bolt cutters, just not as big as most of the bolt cutters that we use. But if you get one of those 4-foot long bolt cutters, you can get enough leverage to cut through pretty much any lock out there. If you can get on the shaft of it, you can cut it. The only non-cuttable lock is going to be a lock that's a high security lock, but it's going to be round where somebody can't get to the shaft, and they can't get the jaws of the bolt cutters open wide enough to just basically crush the case itself. You see some companies that have the locks that are up inside a metal box. That's one way to stop locks from being cut. But the system that we have, if it's got a shaft on it, or whatever you call that loop of metal, like normal padlocks, it can be cut. Okay, so this notion that assa abloy can't be cut is false. And here's the other thing that's going on, and this is why I buy locks, but I don't buy super expensive ones. Recently, I had a master lock that was a pretty solid product, and I had it on a trailer, but I got the trailer washed in Pittston. Well, when I got to the 90, which was not far from Pittston, the lock was frozen, right? Like, I couldn't get the key in it. And rather than, because this was a very busy place, and it was, you know, get backed into a door, it's dark, it's cold, rather than wait around for, you know, to try to get the lock defrosted by holding it in my hand and blowing on it or whatever, you know, I don't have a lighter. I guess that would have maybe worked better. I was just like, screw it. I went and got my bolt cutters and I cut it. Now, it took some effort because this was a pretty strong lock. In fact, when I cut it, it was so, there was so much friction or whatever that I saw sparks. So, you know, I had to cut my own lock off. I mean, you know, it just happens, right? So, you know, I wouldn't want to put a lock on a trailer that I couldn't cut off, or somebody couldn't cut off for me, because what if you do lose the key? Or what if the lock malfunctions and your only choice is to cut it off? And there's nothing that can cut it off. There's no tool powerful enough to cut it off. You know, not even like you know, a whole Matro, you know, rescue tool, right? That we used to, like, fire departments use these. Hurst is another brand where you cut the entire A post. You know, nothing can cut these locks. Well, guess what? If you can't cut the lock, you can't get the trailer doors open. If you can't get the trailer doors open, you can't deliver your load. Okay? And like I said on somebody else's channel, I think Lyle's, I just made the comment, any thief that really wants what's in your trailer is going to get it, okay? Because, you know, even with a lock that's like as strong as anything on earth, look at the latches on the doors, right? If I can't cut through the lock itself, I can probably cut through the latch devices. And since the L-shaped latches that are added after the trailer's made often don't line up because they've overlapped and people have just slammed the doors, sometimes you know it's tough to even get a lock through those, you know. But anyway, enough about that. I think you get the point. And as I've said in the past, I've never had a load stolen or pilfered or a trailer broken into. It just hasn't happened. And part of that is, you know, people not talking about their loads. That's a big part of it. That's a very big part of it. I mean, really, who wants to break into a trailer and find out that it's like, you know, cardboard packaging, just stacked up cardboard? Nobody wants that, right? It's useless. unless you're the company that wants to package some product in that. You know, people, I don't think people want to go around cutting locks and getting in trailers randomly. Like they already want to know there's going to be some payoff there. It's like if banks sometimes only had ping pong balls and used gum as their value, people wouldn't rob banks all that. They'd be like, man, I want to make sure this place doesn't have just ping pong balls and already chewed up gum. I want to make sure they have cash. So there's that. The other thing is the stolen trailers. Okay, and I'm going to go out on a limb here at the risk of maybe embarrassing myself later and say this. If you get a trailer stolen that was assigned to you, except in extraordinary circumstances, it's pretty much your fault. Because I believe, now I could be proved wrong, but I believe that if you're hooked to a trailer, it's damn near impossible for anybody to steal it. But I also believe that if you're dumb enough to drop a trailer in a place that's unsecured and where you don't have line of sight, you can't see the trailer, and it's not, like in a loading dock or something like that, then you're just asking to get your trailer stolen. I mean, these trailers are really expensive. The reefer unit alone is probably worth like 50 grand or more. So dropping a trailer that costs as much as these do, like we're talking like even a good used reefer is 50 grand. A trailer that's like, been on the road for a while. But a new one, 80 to 100 grand, right? You can make a lot of money with a reefer trailer, and people want to part them out and use what they get. But if you drop a trailer in Texas, you're just asking to get that trailer stolen. If you drop a trailer almost anywhere and leave it, and I see people doing this at truck stops all the time, I'm like, what company thinks that's okay? What company has drivers that think it's okay? I saw a guy, I was in a truck stop in Ohio the other day. There were a bunch of loaded trailers dropped there, and there weren't that many people inside the shop. I'm like, these guys were dropping, and this is right outside of Columbus, by the way. People are dropping these trailers and just driving off and going to like Chuck E. Cheese or something. I don't know. I'm just like, if you got a trailer on your back, it needs to stay there. If for some reason you're in a place, and by the way, Prime has drop yards all over the country. Every major metropolitan area, Prime has drop yards where if you really just got to get rid of that trailer, even, maybe it's like you want to go shopping, you want to, you just can't have the trailer with you. There are places to safely drop them, but, if you think that you're gonna have to drop a trailer, it's just unavoidable, and you're gonna have to drop a trailer in a place that's not really that secure, or even a place you think is secure, there are several things you can do to make it really, really hard for somebody to steal that trailer. Doesn't mean you won't be responsible for it, but it does mean that you will have taken as many steps as you can. Obviously, kingpin locks, right? Kingpin locks, they clamp around the kingpin, and they're pretty much impossible to get off without like a cutting torch. The other thing that I would do, because I always take a belt and suspenders approach to things, kingpin lock, glad hand lock, where you put a glad hand lock, like you see a lot of loading dock people using, and they put it on the red one, the emergency one. Why? Because you don't need to hook up an airline on the blue side or the service side to release the brakes on a trailer. All you need is the red line. You don't need electricity, and you don't need that blue line. You just need that one. and that trailer will go with you. That's why you always see jockeys only hooking up one if they're just constantly moving trailers. So that's the second level of protection. But the third one, the third one that I would recommend if you really, really want to be careful is get a heavy chain and a good lock, and run the chain through the wheels, through the tandem wheels. And if you're really being thorough, you do it on both sides, and you run that chain up and latch it to a space where there's an I-beam underneath the trailer. Or maybe you latch it to the ICC bumper. But you do something to make it really obvious that this thing is not going anywhere. It's not a guarantee if somebody really wants that trailer, but it will make people think, man, that's a lot of work to get this trailer loose. That's a lot of work. And then of course, lock the trailer itself. But, getting a trailer stolen, and I understand why Prime would get upset about it. I mean, Prime does have a lot of trailers, and they've had a few thefts, but one theft is too many, because it is really it's just really monumentally stupid to get a trailer stolen when it's your responsibility. So if you've gotten a trailer stolen, I'm sorry you're hearing this from me, but I'm standing by what I'm saying. If you really got to drop a trailer, and by the way, I'm surprised more trailers aren't stolen. I see loaded flatbeds all over America on weekends, just dropped. I was going through West Virginia. It was just like on the off ramp, right? Like I think it was a TMC dude or some other flatbed company. He just dropped the trailer right by the highway and went home. I was like, if I really needed a flatbed with 40,000 pounds of shingles, I might steal it. Because it looked like it was pretty easy pickings. But anyway, that's my thought on the trailers, and again, I'm just telling the truth about those ASSA Abloy locks. They can be cut. And again, it's not locks that prevent theft. It's just being smart about where you park, how you park. Like if you back up to something like another trailer, makes it hard for anybody to even get the doors open. If you're in a parking lot that has, like a lot of truck stops have a really big drop off behind the trailer. So back as far up as you can so that the back of your trailer is hanging out. I've backed up on slopes that were so steep I could walk underneath the back of the trailer once I went beyond the curb. Do you think somebody really wants to climb up in there and try to figure out what you got? Probably not. Make it a little bit hard for people, and crimes of opportunity get reduced. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Again, thanks everybody for getting us to 1,000 subscribers. I haven't forgot about Richie Rich's request about the insurance. I'm going to put that together, use the VAP board, because everybody loves the VAP board, right? And yeah, I'll be back with that shortly. I'm back on the road for like a week, and just have a little fun out here. Talk to you soon. Bye.